Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Biblio and Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince.
Good save with that. Like you're about to show the back again.
Nope. Last time,
we finally made it into the burrow.
and it only took us 5 chapters this
Only
time.
5 chapters. Where we soon ran into Arthur and Molly Wobbles.
Yes, Arthur and Molly Wobbles.
We also found out exactly who Flem was. Flem de la Coff.
Flem de la Coff. Indeed.
Getting married to Bill.
And Mrs. Weasley is not happy about that.
No one's happy about it. Ginny doesn't like it. Hermione doesn't like it. I'm pretty sure Ron's a little jealous.
Probably a little bit.
At least when she's there.
Mm-hmm. Which in turn I think makes Hermione a little jealous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we saw that big time. I guess Harry's really the only one who doesn't care. Either way.
Harry really is the only one who's like, well, if they're happy...
Whatever.
Yeah, he's the only one who doesn't care.
But we finally ran back into Hermione and Ron. And Harry told them all about the prophecy and what he must do.
Yes.
It's him or Voldemort. Can't be any other way.
Yep.
And then we got our OWLs, and Harry, he didn't make it.
He didn't.
Didn't pass potions.
Well, he did pass potions.
Passed, but not the passing grade he needed.
Not the one that Snape requires, because Snape only takes the best of the best.
Be so funny if Neville actually got, an O.
Oh my god.
He didn't have Snape there to make him all nervous, so he just outstanding.
And Snape's face. If Neville walked into that class just like, what? How is this possible?
How many cauldrons did they give you?
And Hermione got 10 outstandings, or 11, something like that.
She got all outstandings except one. I can't remember what it was.
Defense Against the Dark Arts, I think she got an E.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
She got outstanding in everything else.
Yeah, Harry was the only one who got an outstanding in...
Defense Against the Dark Arts. It was his only O.
Mm-hmm.
Funny how that worked. Hermione got O's and everything but that. Harry got E's.
In everything but Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Right.
Well, no, he didn't get E's in everything. He failed Divination.
And History of Magic. But he knew he was going to fail that anyway. So it was okay. I mean, he did pass out and have a crazy vision during History of Magic, so...
Yes.
Although
I don't
would have
think...
given him a pass on that.
I think he also got an acceptable in astronomy.
That's still passing, though.
That's still passing, but it's not an E.
No, it's not an E. That's true.
And that's also because he had to witness McGonagall get stunned during the examination.
Yes. Yes.
And Hagrid forcibly removed from his hut.
Right, running away with Fang on his shoulders.
Yes.
So that'll distract you from doing well on your test, for sure. Chapter 6. Draco's Detour. Harry remained within the confines of the Burrow's garden over the next few weeks. He spent most of his days playing two-a-side Quidditch in the Weasleys' orchard, he and Hermione against Ron and Ginny. Hermione was dreadful and Ginny good, so they were reasonably well matched, and his evenings eating triple helpings of everything Mrs. Weasley put in front of him. It would have been a happy, peaceful holiday had it not been for the stories of disappearances, odd accidents, even of deaths appearing almost daily in the Prophet. Sometimes Bill and Mr. Weasley brought home news before it even reached the paper. To Mrs. Weasley's displeasure, Harry's 16th birthday celebrations were marred by grisly tidings brought to the party by Remus Lupin, who was looking gaunt and grim, his brown hair streaked liberally with grey, his clothes more ragged and patched than ever. "There have been a couple more Dementor attacks," he announced as Mrs. Weasley passed him a large slice of birthday cake. "And they've found Igor Karkaroff's body in a shack up north. The dark mark had been set over it. Well, frankly, I'm surprised he stayed alive for even a year after deserting the Death Eaters. Sirius's brother Regulus only managed a few days, as far as I can remember." "Yes, well," said Mrs. Weasley, frowning. "Perhaps we should talk about something different." "Did you hear about Florian Fortescue, Remus?" asked Bill, who was being plied with wine by Fleur. "The man who ran—" "The ice cream place in Diagon Alley?" Harry interrupted, with an unpleasant hollow sensation in the pit of his stomach. "He used to give me free ice creams. What's happened to him?" "Dragged off by the look of his place." "Why?" said Ron, while Mrs. Weasley pointedly glared at Bill. "Who knows? He must have upset them somehow. He was a good man, Florian." "Talking of Diagon Alley," said Mr. Weasley, "looks like Ollivander's gone too." "The wand maker?" said Ginny, startled. "That's the one. Shop's empty. No sign of a struggle. No one knows whether he left voluntarily or was kidnapped." "But wands? What'll people do for wands?" "They'll make do with other makers," said Lupin. "But Ollivander was the best, and if the other side have got him, it's not so good for us." The day after this rather gloomy birthday tea, their letters and book lists arrived from Hogwarts. Harry's included a surprise. He had been made Quidditch captain. "That gives you equal status with prefects," said Hermione happily. "You can use our special bathroom now and everything." "Wow, I remember when Charlie wore one of these," said Ron, examining the badge with glee. "Harry, this is so cool. You're my captain. If you let me back on the team, I suppose." "Well, I don't suppose we'll put off a trip to Diagon Alley much longer now that we've got these," sighed Mrs. Weasley, looking down Ron's book list. "We'll go on Saturday as long as your father doesn't have to go into work again. I'm not going there without him." "Mum, do you honestly think you know who's going to be hiding behind a bookshelf in Flourish and Blots?" sniggered Ron. "Fortescue and Ollivander went on holiday, did they?" said Mrs. Weasley, firing up at once. "If you think security's a laughing matter, you can stay behind and I'll get your things myself." "No, I want to come. I want to see Fred and George's shop," said Ron hastily. "Then you buck up your ideas, young man, before I decide you're too immature to come with us," said Mrs. Weasley angrily, snatching up her clock, all 9 hands of which were still pointing at mortal peril, and balancing it on top of a pile of just laundered towels. "And that goes for returning to Hogwarts as well." Ron turned to stare incredulously at Harry as his mother hoisted the laundry basket and the teetering clock into her arms and stormed out of the room. "Blimey, can't even make a joke round here any more." But Ron was careful not to be flippant about Voldemort over the next few days. Saturday dawned without any more outbursts from Mrs. Weasley, though she seemed very tense at breakfast. Bill, who would be staying at home with Fleur, much to Hermione and Ginny's pleasure, passed a full money bag across the table to Harry. "Where's mine?" demanded Ron at once, his eyes wide. "That's already Harry's, idiot," said Bill. "I got it out of your vault for you, Harry, because it's taken about 5 hours for the public to get their gold at the moment. The goblins have tightened security so much. 2 days ago, Archie Philpott had a probity probe stuck up his... Well, just trust me, this way's easier." "Thanks, Bill," said Harry, pocketing his gold. "He is always so thoughtful," purred Fleur adoringly, stroking Bill's nose. Ginny mimed vomiting into a cereal behind Fleur. Harry choked over his cornflakes and Ron thumped him on the back. It was an overcast, murky day. One of the special Ministry of Magic cars, in which Harry had ridden once before, was awaiting them in the front yard when they emerged from the house, pulling on their cloaks. "It's good to see Dad can get us these again," said Ron appreciatively, stretching luxuriously as the car moved smoothly away from the burrow, Bill and Fleur waving from the kitchen window. He, Harry, Hermione and Ginny were all sitting in roomy comfort in the wide back seat. "Don't get used to it, it's only because of Harry," said Mr. Weasley over his shoulder. He and Mrs. Weasley were in the front with the ministry driver. The front passenger seat had obligingly stretched out into what resembled a 2-seater sofa. "He's been given top-grade security status, and will be joining up with additional security at the Leaky Cauldron too." Harry said nothing. He did not much fancy doing his shopping while surrounded by a battalion of Aurors. He had stowed his invisibility cloak in his backpack and felt that, if that was good enough for Dumbledore, it ought to be good enough for the Ministry, though now he came to think of it, he was not sure the Ministry knew about his cloak. "Here you are, then," said the driver, a surprisingly short while later, speaking for the first time as he slowed in Charing Cross Road and stopped outside the Leaky Cauldron. "I'm to wait for you. Any idea how long you'll be?" "Couple of hours, I expect," said Mr. Weasley. "Ah, good, he's here." Harry imitated Mr. Weasley and looked through the window. His heart leapt. There were no auras waiting outside the inn, but instead the giant black-bearded form of Rubeus Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper, wearing a long beaver-skin coat, beaming at the sight of Harry's face and oblivious to the startled stares of passing muggles. "Harry!" he boomed, sweeping Harry into a bone-crushing hug the moment Harry stepped out of the car. "Buckbeak! Witherwings, I mean. You should see him, Harry. He's so happy to be back in the open air." "Glad he's pleased," said Harry, grinning as he massaged his ribs. "We didn't know security meant you." "I know, just like old times, innit? See, the Ministry wanted to send a bunch of horrors, but Dumbledore said I'd do," said Hagrid proudly, throwing out his chest and tucking his thumb into his pockets. "Let's get going then. After you, Molly, Arthur." The leaky cauldron was, for the first time in Harry's memory, completely empty. Only Tom the landlord, wizened and toothless, remained of the old crowd. He looked up hopefully as they entered, but before he could speak, Hagrid said importantly, "Just passing through today, Tom. Sure you understand. Hogwarts business, you know." Tom nodded gloomily and returned to wiping glasses. Harry, Hermione, Hagrid, and the Weasleys walked through the bar and out into the chilly little courtyard at the back where the dustbins stood. Hagrid raised his pink umbrella and tapped a certain brick on the wall, which opened at once to form an archway into a winding cobbled street. They stepped through the entrance and paused, looking around. Diagon Alley had changed. The colourful, glittering window displays of spell books, potion ingredients, and cauldrons were lost to view, hidden behind the large Ministry of Magic posters that had been pasted over them. Most of these sombre purple posters carried blown-up versions of the security advice on the Ministry pamphlets that had been sent out over the summer, but others bore moving black-and-white photographs of Death Eaters known to be on the loose. Bellatrix Lestrange was sneering from the front of the nearest apothecary. A few windows were boarded up, including those of Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlour. On the other hand, a number of shabby-looking stalls had sprung up along the street. The nearest one, which had been erected outside Flourish and Blotts under a striped stained awning, had a cardboard sign pinned to its front. "Amulets, effective against werewolves, dementors, and inferi." A seedy-looking little wizard was rattling armfuls of symbols on chains at passers-by. "One for your little girl, madam," he called at Mrs. Weasley as they passed, leering at Ginny. "Protect her pretty neck." "If I were on duty," said Arthur, glaring angrily at the amulet seller. "Yes, but don't go arresting anyone now, dear. We're in a hurry," said Mrs. Weasley, nervously consulting a list. "I think we'd better go to Madame Malkin's first. Hermione wants new dress robes, and Ron's showing too much ankle in his school robes, and you must need new ones too. Harry, you've grown so much. Come on, everyone." "Molly, it doesn't make sense for all of us to go to Madame Malkin's," said Mr. Weasley. "Why don't those three go with Hagrid, and we can go to Flourish and Blotts and get everyone's school books?" "I don't know," said Mrs. Weasley anxiously, clearly torn between a desire to finish the shopping quickly and the wish to stick together in a pack. "Hagrid, do you think—" "Don't fret, Molly, they'll be fine with me," said Hagrid soothingly, waving an airy hand the size of a dustbin lid. Mrs. Weasley did not look entirely convinced, but allowed the separation, scurrying off toward Flourish and Blotts with her husband and Ginny, while Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Hagrid set off for Madame Malkin's. Harry noticed that many of the people who passed them had the same harried, anxious look as Mrs. Weasley, and that no one was stopping to talk to anyone. The shoppers stayed close together in tightly knit groups, moving intently about their business. No one seemed to be shopping alone. "Might be a bit of a squeeze in here with all of us," said Hagrid, stopping outside Madame Malkin's and bending down to peer through the window. "I'll stand guard outside, all right?" So Harry, Ron, and Hermione entered the little shop together. It appeared at first glance to be empty, but no sooner had the door swung shut behind them than they heard a familiar voice issuing from behind a rack of dress robes in spangled green and blue. "Not a child, in case you haven't noticed, Mother. I'm perfectly capable of doing my shopping alone." There was a clucking noise, and a voice Harry recognized as that of Madame Malkin. The owner said, "Now, dear, your mother's quite right. None of us is supposed to go wandering around on our own any more. It's nothing to do with you being a child. Watch where you're sticking that pin, will you?" A teenage boy with a pale pointed face and white blonde hair appeared from behind the rack, wearing a handsome set of dark green robes that glittered with pins around the hem and the edges of the sleeves. He strode to the mirror and examined himself. It was a few moments before he noticed Harry, Ron, and Hermione reflected over his shoulder. His light grey eyes narrowed. "If you're wondering what that smell is, Mother, a mudblood just walked in," said Draco Malfoy. "I don't think there's any need for language like that," said Madame Malkin, scurrying out from behind the clothes rack, holding a tape measure and a wand. "And I don't want wands drawn in my shop," she added hastily, for a glance toward the door had shown her Harry and Ron both standing there with their wands out and pointing at Malfoy. Hermione, who was standing slightly behind them, whispered, "No, don't. Honestly, it's not worth it." "Yeah, like you dare do magic outside of school," sneered Malfoy. "Who blacked your eye, Granger? I want to send them flowers." "That's quite enough," said Madame Malkin sharply, looking over her shoulder for support. "Madam, please." Narcissa Malfoy strode out from behind the clothes rack. "Put those away," she said coldly to Harry and Ron. "If you attack my son again, I shall ensure that it is the last thing you ever do." "Really?" said Harry, taking a step forward and gazing into the smoothly arrogant face that, for all its pallor, still resembled her sister's. He was as tall as she was now. "Gonna get a few Death Eater pals to do us in, are you?" Madame Malkin squealed and clutched at her heart. "Really, you shouldn't accuse— dangerous things to say. Wands away, please." But Harry did not lower his wand. Narcissa Malfoy smiled unpleasantly. "I see that being Dumbledore's favourite has given you a false sense of security, Harry Potter. But Dumbledore won't always be there to protect you." Harry looked mockingly all around the shop. "Wow, look at that. He's not here now. Why not have a go? They might be able to find you a double cell in Azkaban with your loser of a husband." Malfoy made an angry movement toward Harry, but stumbled over his overlong robe. Ron laughed loudly. "Don't you dare talk to my mother like that, Potter!" Malfoy snarled. "It's all right, Draco," said Narcissa, restraining him with her thin white fingers upon his shoulder. "I expect Potter will be reunited with dear Sirius before I am reunited with Lucius." Harry raised his wand higher. "Harry, no!" moaned Hermione, grabbing his arm and attempting to push it down by his side. "Think! You mustn't! You'll be in so much trouble." Madame Malkin dithered for a moment on the spot, then seemed to decide to act as though nothing was happening, in the hope that it wouldn't. She bent toward Malfoy, who was still glaring at Harry. "I think the sleeve should just come up a little bit more, dear. Let me just— Ah!" bellowed Malfoy, slapping her hand away. "Watch where you're putting those pins, woman. Mother, I don't think I want these any more." He pulled the robes over his head and threw them onto the floor at Madame Malkin's feet. "You're right, Draco," said Narcissa with a contemptuous glance at Hermione. "Now that I know what kind of scum shops here, we'll do better at Twilfit and Tattings." And with that the pair of them strode out of the shop, Malfoy taking care to bang as hard as he could into Ron on the way out. "Well, really!" said Madame Malkin, snatching up the fallen robes and moving the tip of her wand over them like a vacuum cleaner so that it removed all the dust. She was distracted all through the fitting of Harry and Ron's new robes, tried to sell Hermione wizards' dress robes instead of witches', and when she finally bowed them out of the shop, it was with an air of being glad to see the back of them. "Got everything?" said Hagrid brightly when they reappeared at his side. "Just about," said Harry. "Did you see the Malfoys?" "Yeah," said Hagrid, unconcerned. "But they don't dare make trouble in the middle of Diagon Alley, Harry. Don't worry about them." Harry, Ron and Hermione exchanged looks, but before they could disabuse Hagrid of this uncomfortable notion, Mr. and Mrs. Weasley and Ginny all appeared, clutching heavy packages of books. "Everything all right?" said Mrs. Weasley. "Got your robes? Right then, we can pop into the apothecary and Ilops on the way to Fred and George's. Stick close now." Neither Harry nor Ron bought any ingredients at the apothecary, seeing that they were no longer studying potions, but both bought large boxes of owl nuts for Hedwig and Pigwidgeon at the Ilops Owl Emporium. Then, with Mrs. Weasley checking her watch every minute or so, they headed further along the street in search of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, the joke shop run by Fred and George. "We really haven't got too long," said Mrs. Weasley, "so we'll just have a quick look round and then get back to the car. We must be close. That's number 92... 94... Wah!" said Ron, stopping in his tracks. Set against the dull, poster-muffled shop fronts round them, Fred and George's windows hit the eye like a firework display. Casual passers-by were looking back over their shoulders at the windows, and a few rather stunned-looking people had actually come to a halt, transfixed. The left-hand window was dazzlingly full of an assortment of goods that revolved, popped, flashed, bounced and shrieked. Harry's eyes began to water just looking at it. The right-hand window was covered with a gigantic poster, purple like those of the ministry, but emblazoned with flashing yellow letters. "Why are you worrying about you-know-who? You should be worrying about you-know-poo, the constipation sensation that's gripping the nation." Harry started to laugh. He heard a weak sort of moan behind him and looked round to see Mrs. Weasley gazing dumbfounded at the poster. Her lips moved silently, mouthing the name You-know-poo. "They'll be murdered in their beds," she whispered. "No, they won't," said Ron, who, like Harry, was laughing. "This is brilliant." And he and Harry led the way into the shop. It was packed with customers. Harry could not get near the shelves. He stared round, looking up at the boxes piled to the ceiling. Here were the skiving snack boxes that the twins had perfected during their last unfinished year at Hogwarts. Harry noticed that the nosebleed nougat was the most popular, with only one battered box left on the shelf. There were bins full of trick wands, the cheapest merely turning into rubber chickens, or pairs of briefs when waved, the most expensive beating the unwary user round the head and neck, and boxes of quills which came in self-inking, spell-checking, and smart answer varieties. A space cleared in the crowd, and Harry pushed his way toward the counter, where a gaggle of delighted 10-year-olds was watching a tiny little wooden man slowly ascending the steps of a real set of gallows, both perched on a box that read, "Reusable hangman. Spell it or he'll swing." "Patented daydream charms." Hermione had managed to squeeze through a large display near the corner, and was reading the information on the back of a box bearing a highly coloured picture of a handsome youth and a swooning girl who was standing on the deck of a pirate ship. "One simple incantation and you will enter a top-quality, highly realistic 30-minute daydream, easy to fit into the average school lesson and virtually undetectable. Side effects include vacant expression and minor drooling. Not for sale to under 16s. "You know," said Hermione, looking up at Harry, "that really is extraordinary magic." "For that, Hermione," said a voice behind them, "you can have one for free." A beaming Fred stood before them, wearing a set of magenta robes that clashed magnificently with his flaming hair. "How are you, Harry?" They shook hands. "And what's happened to your eye, Hermione?" "Your punching telescope," she said ruefully. "Oh, blimey, I forgot about those," said Fred. "Here." He pulled a tub out of his pocket and handed it to her. She unscrewed it gingerly to reveal a thick yellow paste. "Just dab it on, that bruise will be gone within the hour," said Fred. "We had to find a decent bruise remover. We're testing most of our products on ourselves." Hermione looked nervous. "It is safe, isn't it?" she asked. "Course it is," said Fred bracingly. "Come on, Harry, I'll give you a tour." Harry left Hermione dabbing her black eye with paste and followed Fred toward the back of the shop, where he saw a stand of card and rope tricks. "Muggle magic tricks," said Fred happily, pointing them out. "For freaks like Dad, you know, who love Muggle stuff. It's not a big earner, but we do fairly steady business. They're great novelties. Oh, here's George." Fred's twin took Harry's hand energetically. "Giving him the tour? Come through the back, Harry, that's where we're making the real money. Pocket anything, you, and you'll pay in more than galleons," he added warningly to a small boy who hastily whipped his hand out of the tub labelled "Edible Dark Marks. They'll make anyone sick." George pushed back a curtain to the Muggle tricks, and Harry saw a darker, less crowded room. The packaging on the products lining these shelves was more subdued. "We've just developed this more serious line," said Fred. "Funny how it happened. You wouldn't believe how many people, even people who work for the ministry, can't do a decent shield charm," said George. "Course they didn't have you teaching 'em, Harry." "That's right. Well, we thought shield hats were a bit of a laugh, you know. Challenge your mate to jinx you while you're wearing it and watch his face when the jinx just bounces off. But the ministry bought 500 for all its support staff, and we're still getting massive orders. So we've expanded into a range of shield cloaks, shield gloves. I mean, they couldn't help much against the unforgivable curses, but for minor to moderate hexes or jinxes. And then we thought we'd get into the whole area of defense against the dark arts, because it's a money spinner," continued George enthusiastically. "This is cool. Look, instant darkness powder, we're importing it from Peru. Handy if you want to make a quick escape. And our decoy detonators are just walking off the shelves. Look," said Fred, pointing at a number of weird-looking black horn-type objects that were indeed attempting to scurry out of sight. "You just drop one surreptitiously, and it'll run off and make a nice loud noise out of sight, giving you a diversion if you need one." "Handy," said Harry, impressed. "Here," said George, catching a couple and throwing them to Harry. A young witch with short blonde hair poked her head round the curtain. Harry saw that she, too, was wearing magenta staff robes. "There's a customer out here looking for a joke cauldron, Mr. Weasley and Mr. Weasley," she said. Harry found it very odd to hear Fred and George called Mr. Weasley, but they took it in their stride. "Right you are, Verity, I'm coming," said George promptly. "Harry, you help yourself to anything you want, all right? No charge." "I can't do that," said Harry, who'd already pulled out his money bag to pay for the decoy detonators. "You don't pay here," said Fred firmly, waving away Harry's gold. "But you gave us a start-up loan. We haven't forgotten," said George sternly. "Take whatever you like, and just remember to tell people where you got it if they ask." George swept off through the curtain to help the customers, and Fred led Harry back into the main part of the shop to find Hermione and Ginny still poring over the patented daydream charms. "Haven't you girls found our special Wonder Witch products yet?" said Fred. "Follow me, ladies." Near the window was an array of violently pink products around which a cluster of excited girls were giggling enthusiastically. Hermione and Ginny both hung back, looking wary. "There you go," said Fred proudly. "Best range of love potions you'll find anywhere." Ginny raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Do they work?" she asked. "Certainly they work, for up to 24 hours at a time, depending on the weight of the boy in question. And the attractiveness of the girl," said George, reappearing suddenly at their side. "But we're not selling them to our sister," he added, becoming suddenly stern. "Not when she's already got about 5 boys on the go, from what we've heard." "Whatever you've heard from Ron is a big fat lie," said Ginny calmly, leaning forward to take a small pink pot off the shelf. "What's this?" "Guaranteed 10-second pimple vanisher," said Fred. "Excellent on everything from boils to blackheads. But don't change the subject. Are you or are you not currently going out with a boy named Dean Thomas?" "Yes, I am," said Ginny. "And the last time I looked he was definitely 1 boy, not 5. What are those?" She was pointing at a number of round balls of fluff in shades of pink and purple, all rolling around the bottom of a cage and emitting high-pitched squeaks. "Pygmy puffs," said George. "Miniature puffskins. We can't breed 'em fast enough. So what about Michael Corner?" "I dumped him. He was a bad loser," said Ginny, putting a finger through the bars of the cage and watching the pygmy puffs crowd around it. "They're really cute." "They're fairly cuddly, yeah," conceded Fred. "But you're moving through boyfriends a bit fast, aren't you?" Ginny turned to look at him, her hands on her hips. There was such a Mrs. Weasley-ish glare on her face that Harry was surprised Fred didn't recoil. "It's none of your business, and I'll thank you," she added angrily to Ron, who'd just appeared at George's elbow, laden with merchandise, "not to tell tales about me to these 2. "That's 3 galleons, 9 sickles, and a knut," said Fred, examining the many boxes in Ron's arms. "Cough up." "I'm your brother." "And that's our stuff you're nicking. 3 galleons, 9 sickles. I'll knock off the knut." "But I haven't got 3 galleons, 9 sickles." "You better put it back then, and mind you put it back on the right shelves." Ron dropped several boxes, swore, and made a rude hand gesture at Fred that was unfortunately spotted by Mrs. Weasley, who'd chosen that moment to reappear. "If I see you do that again, I'll jinx your fingers together," she said sharply. "Mum, can I have a pygmy puff?" said Ginny at once. A what?" said Mrs. Weasley warily. "Look, they're so sweet." Mrs. Weasley moved aside to look at the pygmy puffs, and Harry, Ron and Hermione momentarily had an unimpeded view out the window. Draco Malfoy was hurrying up the street alone. As he passed Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, he glanced over his shoulder. Seconds later, he moved beyond the scope of the window, and they lost sight of him. "Wonder where his mummy is," said Harry, frowning. "Giving her the slip by the looks of it," said Ron. "Why, though?" said Hermione. Harry said nothing. He was thinking too hard. Narcissa Malfoy would not have let her precious son out of her sight willingly. Malfoy must have made a real effort to free himself of her clutches. Harry, knowing and loathing Malfoy, was sure the reason could not be innocent. He glanced round. Mrs. Weasley and Ginny were bending over the pygmy puffs. Mr. Weasley was delightedly examining a pack of muggle-marked playing cards. Fred and George were both helping customers. On the other side of the glass, Hagrid was standing with his back to them, looking up and down the street. "Get under here, quick," said Harry, pulling out his invisibility cloak. "Oh, I don't know, Harry," said Hermione, looking uncertainly toward Mrs. Weasley. "Come on," said Ron. She hesitated for a second longer, then ducked under the cloak with Harry and Ron. Nobody noticed them vanish. They were all too interested in Fred and George's products. Harry, Ron, and Hermione squeezed their way out of the door as quickly as they could, but by the time they gained the street, Malfoy had disappeared just as successfully as they had. "He was going in that direction," murmured Harry as quietly as possible so that the humming Hagrid would not hear them. "Come on." They scurried along, peering left and right through shop windows until Hermione pointed ahead. "That's him, isn't it?" she whispered. "Turning left?" "Big surprise," whispered Ron. For Malfoy glanced around, then slid into Nocturne Alley and out of sight. "Quick, or we'll lose him." "Our feet'll be seen," said Hermione anxiously as the cloak flapped a little round their ankles. It was much more difficult hiding all three of them under the cloak these days. "Doesn't matter," said Harry impatiently. "Just hurry." But Nocturne Alley, the side street devoted to the dark arts, looked completely deserted. They peered into windows as they passed, but none of the shops seemed to have any customers at all. Harry supposed it was a bit of a giveaway in these dangerous and suspicious times to buy dark artifacts, or at least to be seen buying them. Hermione gave his arm a hard pinch. "Ow! Shh! Look! He's in there!" she breathed in Harry's ear. They had drawn level with the only shop in Nocturne Alley that Harry had ever visited, Borgin and Burke's, which sold a wide variety of sinister objects. There, in the midst of the cases full of skulls and old bottles, stood Draco Malfoy with his back to them, just visible beyond the same large black cabinet in which Harry had once hidden to avoid Malfoy and his father. Judging by the movements of Malfoy's hands, he was talking animatedly. The proprietor of the shop, Mr. Borgin, an oily-haired, stooping man, stood facing Malfoy. He was wearing a curious expression of mingled resentment and fear. "If only we could hear what they're saying," said Hermione. "We can," Ron said excitedly. "Hang on! Damn!" He dropped a couple more boxes he was still clutching as he fumbled with the largest. "Extendable ears! Look!" "Fantastic!" said Hermione as Ron unravelled the long, flesh-coloured strings and began to feed them toward the bottom of the door. "Oh, I hope the door isn't imperturbable." "No!" said Ron gleefully. "Listen!" They put their heads together and listened intently to the ends of the strings, through which Malfoy's voice could be heard loud and clear as though a radio had been turned on. "You know how to fix it?" "Possibly," said Borgin in a tone that suggested he was unwilling to commit himself. "I'll need to see it, though. Why don't you bring it into the shop?" "I can't," said Malfoy. "It's got to stay put. I just need you to tell me how to do it." Harry saw Borgin lick his lips nervously. "Well, without seeing it, I must say it'll be a difficult job. Perhaps impossible. I couldn't guarantee anything." "No," said Malfoy, and Harry knew just by this tone that Malfoy was sneering. "Perhaps this'll make you more confident." He moved toward Borgin and was blocked from view by the cabinet. Harry, Ron, and Hermione shuffled sideways to try and keep him in sight, but all they could see was Borgin, looking very frightened. "Tell anyone," said Malfoy, "and there will be retribution. You know Fenrir Greyback? He's a family friend. He'll be dropping in from time to make sure you're giving the problem your full attention." "There'll be no need for—" "I'll decide that," said Malfoy. "Well, I'd better be off. And don't forget to keep that one safe. I'll need it." "Perhaps you'd like to take it now?" "No, of course I wouldn't, you stupid little man. How would I look carrying that down the street? Just don't sell it." "Of course not, sir." Borgin made a bow as deep as the one Harry had seen him give Lucius Malfoy. "Not a word to anyone, Borgin, and that includes my mother. Understand?" Naturally," murmured Borgin, bowing again. Next moment the bell over the door tinkled loudly as Malfoy stalked out of the shop, looking very pleased with himself. He passed so close to Harry, Ron, and Hermione that they felt the cloak flutter around their knees again. Inside the shop, Borgin remained frozen. His unctuous smile had vanished. He looked worried. "What was that about?" whispered Ron, reeling in the extendable ears. "Dunno," said Harry, thinking hard. "He wants something mended, and he wants to reserve something in there. Could you see what he pointed at when he said that one? No, he was behind that cabinet. You two stay here, whispered Hermione. What are you... But Hermione had already ducked out from under the cloak. She checked her hair in the reflection of the glass, then marched into the shop, setting the bell tinkling again. Ron hastily fed the extendable ears back under the door and pressed one of the strings to Harry. Hello! Horrible morning, isn't it? Said Hermione brightly to Borgin, who did not answer, but cast her a suspicious look. Humming cheerily, Hermione strode through the jumble of objects on display. Is this necklace for sale? She added, pushing aside a glass-fronted case. If you've got 1,500 galleons, said Mr. Borgin coldly. No, I haven't got quite that much, said Hermione, walking on. And what about this lovely, skull? 16 galleons. So it's for sale, then? It isn't being kept for anyone? Mr. Borgin squinted at her. Harry had the nasty feeling he knew exactly what Hermione was up to. Apparently Hermione felt she'd been rumbled too, because she suddenly threw caution to the wind. The thing is that boy who was just in here now, Draco Malfoy, well, he's a friend of mine, and I want to get him a birthday present, but if he's already reserved anything, I obviously don't want to get him the same thing, so, It was a pretty lame story in Harry's opinion, and apparently Borgin thought so too. Out! He said sharply. Get out! Hermione did not wait to be asked twice, but hurried out the door with Borgin at her heels. As the bell tinkled again, Borgin slammed the door behind her and put up the closed sign. Ah, well, said Ron, throwing the cloak back over Hermione. Worth a try, but you were a bit obvious. Well, next time maybe you can show me how it's done, Master of Mystery, she snapped. Ron and Hermione bickered all the way back to the Weasleys' Wizard Wheezes, where they were forced to stop so they could dodge undetected around a very anxious-looking Mrs. Weasley and Hagrid, who had clearly noticed their absence. Once in the shop, Harry whipped off the invisibility cloak, hid it in his bag, and joined in with the other two when they insisted, in answer to Mrs. Weasley's accusations, that they had been in the back room all along, and that she simply could not have looked properly.
Harry, what'd you tell Dumbledore? Don't be risking your neck. Here he is going into Nocturne Alley.
To see what Malfoy's doing.
Mm-hmm. Some shady dealing.
He just can't help himself where Malfoy's concerned. He's just like, he's up to no good. He's doing something.
I almost thought he was going to curse Malfoy right in the rope shop.
He was ready.
Oh, yeah.
Him and Narcissa had words.
Oh, yeah.
Your loser husband. Harry just not giving any F's.
No, I think he's had it with the Death Eaters. Especially that family in particular.
Yeah, I think he's had it just about enough of the Malfoys.
Considering Narcissa is Bellatrix's sister.
Narcissa is Bellatrix's sister. He pretty much had a fight with Lucius in the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And Draco's been tormenting him for years.
I know, when she was threatening Harry, if I was Harry, I'd just be like, well, 10 of them couldn't get me last time, so I don't think I'm really that worried.
Right.
Dumbledore wasn't there when your husband was trying to get me. What's your excuse there?
Right. Dumbledore won't always be around to save you. Well, he's not here right now, so why don't you go for it?
Yeah.
Draco, I think, very clearly, he's doing that whole, stop preening over me, Mom. But he very much, I think, really loves his mom and wants to defend her honor at every turn. So he got pissed when Harry started talking to his mom like that. He's like, don't you talk to my mother like that. You don't disrespect my mother. Only I disrespect my mother.
She deserves it, Malfoy. Chill out.
I'm not saying she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think Draco loves his mommy.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, look at him. He's very much a mama's boy.
I think Draco loves his mommy, and Hero worships his dad.
Yeah, which is sad.
Yeah. But Draco has literally known nothing else except that pure blood life.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up, his parent...
Shows how parents can ruin their children.
I don't know if Narcissa is actually a Death Eater. She might just be married to one and be caught in the middle. Maybe she is one.
I feel like she is one.
Alright, either way. Both your parents are Death Eaters. We'll just assume. Both your parents are Death Eaters.
Because Voldemort told her the plan. She didn't know Snape knew the plan.
Right. Yeah, Voldemort
so I'm
told
sure
her.
Voldemort wouldn't be telling her if she wasn't a Death Eater.
So,
yes,
from Draco's perspective, both your parents are Death Eaters. Your aunt is a Death Eater who has been in Azkaban for the last however many years, 14, 15 years. Your friend's parents are Death Eaters. Like, you've literally never experienced anything else other than that. Are you surprised that he is a racist? Like,
no excuse.
I'm not saying it's an excuse.
He's a horrible person. Look at Sirius.
I agree. I'm not saying it's an excuse. I'm just commenting on, well, of course this is what you get when that's what you are raised around.
But not always. Sirius.
Not always. Sirius is a, like, rare exception to that rule, I feel like. 90% of the time, if you're raised by racists, you're gonna be a racist. Or you're gonna rebel so hard in the other direction, like Sirius did.
Yes.
No, it's not an excuse. Because, yeah, Sirius was like, F this.
And, the Weasley brothers getting into arms dealing.
Yeah, they're doing serious stuff. Serious.
That's basically what it is, too. They're arms dealers.
Yeah.
Defense contractors.
Defense contractors, yeah.
Is the term, I believe.
It just goes to show how good at magic they really are.
Even Hermione gave them props.
Like, wow, this is really good magic. Like, the Weasley twins are no joke. They are good at magic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love reading that and just seeing how well they're doing and how good at what they do they are and how successful they are. It just makes me happy. I don't know.
I wonder how that is if they ever run into Umbridge when they're doing business with the Ministry. Go to the Ministry to do business.
Umbridge. Oh. If she even still works for the Ministry at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to say she'd probably be fired, but they didn't say anything about it.
No. The last time we saw her was clop, clop, clop,
Yeah.
clop, clop.
Maybe she's in the ward with,
Gilderoy Lockhart.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm doing joined writing. Would you like an autograph? But you've already given me 12. 12? You can never have too many.
She gives him her torture quill or whatever.
Oh my god, poor Gilderoy. That would be terrible. Oh, that would be so mean.
It would. But at the same
She's
time, I think it would be
mean.
appropriate that he just have his autograph scarred into him.
That's true. It would be fitting, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think Malfoy's doing? What do you think he wants fixed? What did he show Borgin to freak him out?
Oh, the dark mark.
You think so?
Yeah, it's the dark mark. Because he went out and stuck out his hand. It's gonna be the dark mark, and then... Oh, you're a Death Eater. Okay, I'm not gonna mess with you. Give you a good deal.
Do whatever you want, man. Do whatever you want.
What he's getting fixed, though, I don't know.
And something is being reserved.
Mm-hmm.
What's he up to? I want to go to Borgenenberg so bad.
You want a skull? Only 16 galleons.
What does it do?
Skull? Like, what more do you need?
What kind? I don't, does it have any magical properties? Is it just there for decoration?
I'm sure you could give it magical properties.
That's true.
Buy the skull and then bring it to the Weasley brothers. They'll do something with it.
I'm sure they will.
Be the greatest Halloween costume ever.
I also think everyone is just very protective of Ginny and her love life. Like, guys, lay off of her.
That's just older brother stuff.
If I were her, I'd be annoyed too. I'd be like, just step off. And it's not 5 boys, Ron. Just because you aren't getting any girls in your life doesn't mean you have to hate on me.
Well, he is. He's just oblivious to it. Hermione.
Hermione. Oh, and hey, Harry's Quidditch captain.
Oh, yeah. Called that one.
Yeah, you did. That's
There
cool.
was no other choice.
Yeah, and who else would they pick?
Yeah. So now he can use the prefect's bathroom and take another bath.
With
in
Myrtle.
the big tub.
With Myrtle.
Yeah, would that be traumatizing for him?
To go back in the tub. I love that was Hermione's, like, first response. Oh, you're on the same level as us. You can use our bathroom.
It was a nice bathroom.
It was a nice bathroom. It makes me wonder, what are the other bathrooms like where they bathe?
Well, you kind of saw it in Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, but there was nowhere to bathe in there.
Maybe some showers off to the side.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
It's probably just showers in the other ones, and this one has the big...
The big tub.
Yeah.
The big fancy pantsness. I feel like there was
Which makes you wonder, what does the headmaster's bathroom look like? Although I guess he doesn't have a bathroom, because he had to go down to
the room of
the
requirement.
room of requirements.
Maybe, no, I think he probably has his own bathroom. It just, maybe he was too far away from his bathroom, and he really had to go.
But it was 5 a.m. when it happened. Wouldn't you
It's
think
like
he'd be sleeping and wake up?
I don't know, he's Dumbledore. Maybe he's been up for 3 hours 'cause he's got shit on his mind. He's been walking around the castle brooding or something.
Nah, I mean, maybe. I don't know. All signs point to the fact that he doesn't have his own personal bathroom.
I think he has his own personal
Maybe it's
bathroom.
just a staff bathroom.
I don't think so. Well, I don't know. McGonagall lives at the castle, so I would think she would have her own quarters at the castle.
Hmm.
Snape lives at the castle.
When he's not at
Spinner's
End.
So he has his own quarters. So I'd imagine Dumbledore has his own, living space with his own bathroom.
Yeah, probably.
I just feel like he was in that particular part of the castle and he really had to pee.
I guess so.
Oh. God, I can't stop yawning. Sorry about that.
I suppose. But then that brings me back. I wonder how nice his bathroom is.
Probably pretty nice. It's a headmaster's bathroom. I'm
Mhm.
sure it's probably pretty fancy.
Probably just like the prefect's bathroom, but all his.
Right. Private bathroom.
Heated toilets.
50 different spouts of bubble bath, different colors, different kinds of bubbles, all kinds of stuff.
And Igor.
Oh, yeah, Karkaroff. Dead.
Yep.
Killed.
I like how you said we would see him again, and it's literally just a quick 2-sentence thing. Yep, he's dead.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Anyways.
Yep. That was the other thing I was trying to think of. I was like, what else did we find out in this chapter? Yeah, Karkaroff died. They caught him. And yeah, kind of like Lupin and Bill, I'm kind of surprised that it took that long.
Yeah, for real.
Also, Ollivander's gone. That sucks. What happened to him? Where'd he go?
I mean, he is the best wand maker, so did the Death Eaters capture him?
Or did he hightail it out of there before they could get him? Saw the writing on the wall and was like, yeah, I better go before they come for me.
That could be it. I don't know, though, just because you told me that I learn about wands in the 7th book.
Yeah.
So, I guess my theory could be that the Death Eaters captured him, and they're gonna have him construct, the best wands or something, some super powerful wand, and then it's gonna, overpower Harry and something like that, and then he's gonna have to, like, get a new wand, and I don't know. Something like that. They're gonna have to rescue him, and then he's gonna have to make Harry a wand, or he makes 2 wands the same again, and doesn't tell Voldemort that he made another one.
So that Priory Incantatem would happen all over again?
Yeah, and then, you know, he's like, he gets freed or something, and it's like, Harry, quick, take this.
Don't go alone. Take this with you.
Yes.
Very interesting theory there about Ollivander. I guess we'll have to wait until 7 to find out about wands.
I guess so. Well, that's all. That's, like, I don't know. That's, like, the big reason I would think we'd find out about wands. So we kind of already learned about their wands for the most part.
There's so much about wands you don't even know yet.
Well, yeah, I think.
Yeah. But. Wands. They're awesome. So the next chapter is called The Slug Club.
The Slug Club?
Yep.
Is Ron doing magic again?
No. It's Ron doing magic. In general, is Ron doing magic. It's kind of a chunky chapter. It's a good one, though. I think. If I remember it correctly. Yeah, if I remember it correctly. It's a pretty good one. The Slug Club. Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. Alrighty then. The chapter after that is a good one.
Oh, wait, I got it.
What?
The Slug Club, that's gonna be all of, Slughorn's, peoples that he's collected.
His favorites?
Yeah, his, like, club of people that he gets stuff from. So we gonna run into him and gonna try to recruit Harry for the Slug Club, or is he gonna learn more about the Slug Club?
I mean, they are gonna go to... I'm assuming they went to Diagon Alley, so they're probably gonna go to Hogwarts in the next chapter. So we'll probably see Professor Slughorn.
Yes. So yeah, that's... Okay.
I love him.
It took me a second, but that's what it is. It's his group of collectibles.
He really wished he could have had the set. Sirius and Regulus. Would have been nice to have this set. It's such a weird thing to say.
It's like he's collecting the chocolate frog cards of them.
Right. Like, yeah. Weirdo. Oh, he's great, though. He's great. You'll see. He's wonderful. He's a great character.
I don't know. That's what you say about Snape. And it's been 6 books. I'm still waiting.
You're gonna wait a while.
There's not much more waiting I can do.
You're gonna wait.
We're gonna run out of pages here.
You're gonna wait a while. I think Slughorn is proof that not all Slytherins are bad.
He's not, like, evil dark magic, but he's still, like, pretty scummy.
Considering what the other Slytherins do, he's, like, awesome.
He's like the
good dude.
male version of a gold digger.
He's just looking out for himself, trying to live that good life. It's not bad. It's a little selfish, but it's not bad. He's not a mean person.
No, he's not a mean
You know,
person.
he's not rude to people. He's just
a
little selfish. So, everyone, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. And be sure to tune in next time for Chapter 7, The Slug Club.